Good day to everyone. Today we'll be discussing about the foundations of curriculum. So one of the foundations include the philosophical foundation. So philosophy is at the heart of the curriculum development. It helps us educators in formulating beliefs, arguments, and assumptions, and in making value judgment. Philosophy develop a broad outlook, and it also helps us in answering what schools are for, what subjects are important, how students should learn, and what materials and methods should be used. We consider philosophy as the starting point, the basis, and to where we anchor our decision making about education in its totality. By definition, philosophy is considered as a study of basic ideas about knowledge, truth, right and wrong, and the nature of meaning of life. In fact, philosophy is also considered as a process of liberation from ignorance and prejudice. It has a multidimensional effect of helping us to indicate in general what we mean, make what we mean more specific and definite, and develop what we mean into a useful construct. So that is why philosophy is a crucial determinant of curriculum trends and the curriculum development process by helping clarify our thought process. And because philosophy is a process of the mind, there are a variety of philosophical thoughts that need consideration. To start with, there are two major categories of philosophy: the traditional and modern philosophy. This particular major philosophy include the most common such as idealism, realism, pragmatism, and existentialism. Idealism. Idealism is considered one of the oldest philosophical systems, whose main proponent was the famous Greek philosopher Plato. Idealism advocates that ideas constitute what is real and permanent. For example, ideas are the only true reality. Idealism also emphasizes the spiritual component of a man, being man as a spiritual being. According to this philosophy, education is the process of development of a person, his or her conscious and spiritual self. The ultimate responsibility for learning rests with learners, and that school exists to develop character, increase student knowledge, and cultivates aesthetic taste. The teacher is always expected to be a model, a friend, and a guide to the learners. On the other hand, realism is another school of thought that is traced back to another famous philosopher named Aristotle. He is also a Greek philosopher. According to this philosophy, matter or objects that we exist by themselves. For example, they exist absolutely with or without man. In other words, matter is not a construct of the human mind. So the following principles of realism are therefore upheld, like the principle of independence of matter, the principles of orderliness of the world behind its organization. This means that the law and order prevail in the universe, and also the principle of the world as real as discovered by the scientists. Thus, it is possible to have objective knowledge of the world. Our senses are also a source of knowledge. So the philosophy also advocates that values exist objectively. They are absolute and eternal. So what could be the educational implication of this realism philosophy? So there are a few that I can determined, such as, for example, the ultimate educational aim is achievement of knowledge of nature and in inner workings of the universe. Another is that education is essentially transmission of inherited culture from one generation to another generation. Also, disciplines of curriculum should contain certain elements of culture. And lastly, students should learn disciplines to develop intellectual skills, to discover important principles and theoretical insights. So based on this philosophy, there should be a core curriculum for every learner. The next philosophy is pragmatism. The main proponent of this pragmatism is John Dewey. The proponents of pragmatism were reacting against what they considered as failures or shortcomings of the traditional school system, supported by idealism and realism. Some of the criticisms included that traditional curriculum content included a lot of meaningless and needless content. Traditional curriculum did not give a utility education, and traditional curriculum was rigid and did not cater to individual needs of particular learners. So that means that pragmatism advocated for reality being considered as instrumental, used as an instrument to solve problems. Philosophy is therefore built on practical use, such as cash value of ideas. Hence, truth is what works, what turns out all night, and truth also should be the idea that has been tested, verified, and found effective in solving problems. So, what are the implications of pragmatism in education? The first is learning from experience. If experience is the source of knowledge, it is also a source of education. We learn by doing. However, not every experience is educative. Experience must be productive and shall produce growth. That is why in scientific method in solving problem, according to John Dewey, the process involves identifying the problem, formulating the hypothesis, gathering and collecting data, and of course that will help a lot to solve the problem. We test the hypothesis, and later on we can draw conclusion and recommendation. This is the scientific method that the pragmatism would likely to introduce. And at the same time, pragmatism propose a curriculum based on the problems that arise in our daily lives. School is also therefore an extension of home and community, and that the teacher should be a resource and a guide, a motivator. Teaching must be child-centered when it comes to pragmatism's perspective. That for the pragmatists, all subjects are vital, and that the child should explore new knowledge. Another philosophy is existentialism. Existentialism is defined as the philosophy of existence. It is defined as that man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. A person is therefore free to choose the type of life to live and is in control of his or her destiny. An individual is thus free to make choices and be responsible for them. Reality, therefore, is subjective. Values emphasized are those that the individual chooses freely according to his or her perceptions. So, what's the implication of existentialism on education and curriculum? So, the main implication is that it provides emphasis on knowledge and abilities for personal choice. Hence, the need to acquire knowledge and principles of the human condition and acts of choice making. So curriculum should have a broad range of subject matter from which learners can choose. That is why right now in our curriculum we have these electives, which is an inclusion of the major, aside from the major and the professional subjects. So those electives include human emotions, subjects related to aesthetics, and those related to philosophical aspects. We also have educational philosophies that arise from traditional philosophy, which include perennialism and essentialism. Perennialism draws from both idealism and realism. The perennialists believe that the cement of education is the common nature of man. With that focus, education should be the same for everyone. Perennialists stated that education must therefore pursue perennial truths. These truths are absolute and universal. The philosophy presupposes that there are permanent studies and knowledge that is available, particularly from the great books, which should be taught to all students. So, in relation to curriculum development, curriculum is expected to contain important subjects taught in their customary separate form: history as history, geography as geography, civics as civics, rather than combining them and naming them as social studies. So now in our present curriculum, we have actually social studies that involves these very specifics about history, about geography, about civics. We also have other subjects such as literature, philosophy, and theology, okay, in some of the schools. Because these particular subjects are believed to increase the ability to sharpen the mind. Meanwhile, essentialism focuses on traditional subjects like reading, writing, and mathematics. This philosophy aims to instill students with the essentials of academic knowledge and character development. Hence, many authors highlighted the importance of respect and responsibility in schools. So, essentialist educational aims are to develop intellectual powers as well as educate competent persons. Schools should therefore not be sidetracked into catering to the personal problems and social needs of students. As in fact, cultural heritage needs should be considered for curriculum making. Essential skills, especially like reading, writing, and arithmetic, and other academic subjects such as English, science, math, are given priority in the educational process with an emphasis on mastery of concepts and principles of subject matter. Unlike the perennials, the curriculum is subject-centered and emphasizes separate organizational disciplines as opposed to integrated subjects. Another important philosophy is progressivism. Progressivism is one of the educational philosophies originating from pragmatism. Hence, all that we discussed earlier about pragmatism holds true for progressivism. Besides, Dewey's contribution and some other scholars are actually very important in the formulation of this kind of philosophy. Progressivism education seeks to promote democratic schooling as well as social living. The other major emphasis is on a child or learner-centered curriculum. The curriculum, therefore, is based on the learner's interests, needs, abilities, and aspirations, among other characteristics of the learners. Progressive education curriculum emphasize 5 approaches to the teaching and learning process that include teacher-pupil planning of curriculum activities, flexible curriculum and individualized instruction, and learner-centered teaching and learning methodology. In this type, the emphasis is on a child-centered curriculum, which necessitates a flexible and broad curriculum. There is also an emphasis on practical skills. The last is Reconstructionism. Reconstructionism hold on to an anthropological social philosophy that would put schools at the forefront of remaking the society. Reconstructionism evolved from a critical perspective of the work of the progressivists, who put much emphasis on the needs of the child, sometimes at the expense of societal needs. So this philosophy aims are to improve and reconstruct society as need be, as well as education for change and social reforms. That is why nowadays it is included the gender and development in the curriculum because of this influence of the Reconstructionism philosophy. So in this philosophy, the critical social problems might be national or global, including such issues as oppression, poverty, hunger, racial, ethnic issues, and health issues are actually should be considered, since the Reconstructionists believe that resources are available to solve these problems, and the education profession could be the catalyst to prepare and organize future generations to make this possible. So the Reconstructionists use multiple teaching materials, and they consider the inclusion of subject matter that would be useful to serve the central cause of the issue of concern. Planning of curriculum often involves various stakeholders, including the learners, the parents, and the community leaders.